We jump back into this series, and I'll tell you what, I got to tell you, right out of the gate, we talk about passion today, and the most helpful thing for me to get my head around what I think we need to hear from God's Word today begins with this simple move I made. I looked up the word. I looked up the word passion because it just helps me when I know what we're talking about. And I'm not going to give you some flat definition or anything like that as much, but I just want you to take a step back from the word passion and just see how it gets thrown around in a lot of different ways, all right? So look at it with me, all right? A couple shares a passionate kiss. Oh, yeah, I got a whistle, and I got a little gag reflex over here. This is going to be so much fun. Oh, but listen, also, a coach gives a passionate halftime speech. And a social care worker is passionate about his cause, and a musician talks about her passion for an artistic style. This word passion gets thrown around in a lot of different ways, and it can almost kind of turn into a Swiss Army knife of sorts. Here's the tie-in. When we're talking about passion today, the tie-in is this. If you've never thought about it before, and I'm going to put it on the screen purposely here, passion is when we let emotion rule. Like if you're writing things down today, and we've equipped you to do that, you got to put the exclamation part, because you got to hear me be like, let emotion rule. Like there's these moments where we want the feeling to carry us. When we let emotion rule, the common denominator of when a coach is so dialed into his team's potential to take on the opponents in the second half, it's just clouding his vision and the veins are popping and everybody on the team is like, I want to go where that dude is going. I believe that we've got this. Or when a social care worker puts in long hours way beyond the call of duty and people see that and they're like, how can I sign up to volunteer in what you're doing? Or when a musician is so absorbed in what she hears that she feels it and her eyes close and she sways and it's like she can see the music. Well, the common denominator is that what they are feeling carries them into powerful, moving, unforgettable moments, right? So when you and I gather around and we talk about the promise of passion in a relationship, we're not just talking about stay hooked on smooching. Like there's more to it. The promise of passion is the commitment to feeling so strongly for each other that those feelings are allowed to move you in the relationship in a powerful way, in a way that just makes you keep coming back. You feel strongly for each other. And this is an incredibly important commitment to make in a relationship. And especially in a marriage, because those moving feelings that keep bringing you back for more, they can fade out. They can become inconvenient. They can get edged out by other conflicting emotions. Any other Calvin and Hobbes fans here in the room today? Quite a few. All right, great. It's one of those comic strips that sneaks great life observation into, playful humor. I'm going to put a Calvin and Hobbes quote on the screen. Calvin says in one strip, do you know what's weird? Day by day, nothing seems to change, but pretty soon, everything's different. And I had to laugh because this morning I was on Facebook, and I kid you not, a friend of mine quoted that and said, C.S. Lewis once said, and then put that line under C.S. Lewis. And that's just such an internet thing to do, right? I don't know who said this. It must have been Abraham Lincoln, or C.S. Lewis. Close. Close. One of the greatest theologians of the 20th century, comic strip. Yeah, you're almost there. You're almost there. It was Calvin and Hobbes that said this one. Day by day, nothing seems to change, but pretty soon everything's different. Bill Watterson was not talking about his marriage in that moment, but boy, oh boy, does that speak for so many relationships, and specifically when you compare the beginning of a relationship to that same relationship years down the road. Got a lot of marrieds in this room. Any people married beyond 5 years? Raise your hand. How about 10 years? Wow, 15, 20, 30, 40. Guys, I just want to give a round of applause. There's like so many, you're sticking it out. Oh my gosh, have you noticed? These are the people who are nodding their heads. Have you ever noticed that day by day, nothing seems to change in a relationship and they find their rhythm and things are fairly predictable, and then all of a sudden you wake up one morning, have you ever had this thought? I don't know who I am in this relationship anymore. Like I was wondering what happened to the more vibrant, energetic me that got into the relationship in the first place. Or maybe you wake up one day and you notice that your marriage, it just doesn't look the way you thought it would because it's hit a wall, or it's in a rut or a ditch or a funk, and you ask yourself, how do we end up here? Like, what happened that when we're alone for dinner, we run out of things to talk about? Like when did that happen? It's weird. It's like day by day, nothing seems to change, and then before you know it, what? Everything's different. And there's this missing piece, and it's those sensory, emotional overload moments that, you need to hear this, are certainly in the design of marriage. I want to take you back to Genesis chapter 2, because this has been a frequent stop for us every week of this series, as it gives so much blueprint to this thing called marriage. Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to pick it up at verse 23. And by this point in the narrative, and you've gotten a little more of this as this series has unfolded, by this point the narrative is clear. In the creation story, we got a 1.0 on everything in the world now. We've got our very first human, and what has become clear is that human beings were, one, designed to have a relationship with God, their loving creator, person to person, and two, human beings were designed to have relationships with other humans. And so God is going to provide that for Adam, because right now Adam's the first human being. He's the only human being. He's going to provide not just human community, though. He's going to one-up it. He's going to give the man a wife, which is just like awesome for Adam. Like, easiest job ever. She cannot say, somebody else asked me to the prom before you called. Like, this is it. This is us. There's the two of us. And so by the time you get to verse 23, what happens is God has put Adam in a deep sleep, purposeful in his design. He's pulled the rib out of Adam in order to make Eve. And then Adam wakes up from this deep, deep sleep, and he rubs his eyes, and he sees the world's first woman. And then he does like the world's first cartoon double take, with the eyes and the, kind of deal. And the word your Bible might be, it's like exclamatory. It's like, at last. Because he's gone through every other living creature, and they all seem to have their mate, and he just thoroughly knows he's alone in the world. And he says at last, look at verse 23. It says, the man says, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. And God already told him, name everything else. He's like, I know what this is going to be called. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. And he's speaking out of their similarity. And there's just such a picturesque thing here of why a rib, and it's like at the side of one team kind of thing. It's beautiful. And the next verse, and you remember this from last week, it says that is why a man leaves his father and his mother. He's united to his wife, and they become one flesh. Hubba hubba. And then you see verse 25, and now this is the chapter ending. And we get this final line here, and it says so much more. It says, Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. And that's going to carry implications over into the next chapter where everything in the world is going to change. But right here, we stay here to understand that this one flesh thing, it's a powerful image that includes physical closeness to the point of a biologically intoxicating overload of feeling, this physical intimacy of two becoming one. You've got this naked and unashamed thing it is this compelling picture of not just I'm yours, you're mine, 100% of my skin and feeling is accessible and available to you, but there's so much more to it. It's such a compelling picture of safety in vulnerability. How does that make you feel? See, God's word is so helpful and important, and when we put it above all the things we know, that we take our cues from that. You are not wrong for craving, feeling, and passion in your marriage. It's part of the design. However, I think that we all find ourselves in this place in our marriages at one point or another where we notice things have faded. It doesn't feel that way anymore. Things have stalled in the relationship. How does that happen? I think it happens due to a few sobering realities. One reality is that there's always a gap between expectation and reality. Every relationship, all of them. Like expectations are the things you thought would be, right? And reality is what is. And any relationship you get into for a good amount of time, wow, you will see how great a gap can exist between what we expect, what we thought would be, and what actually is going to be. Why is that? Well, sometimes our expectations are just dumb. They're just foolish or they're naive. We've come to admit that, right? Do you remember as teenagers, somebody said, you can get married one day? He's like, oh yeah, of course I'll get married one day. When are you going to get married? Oh, at the ripe old age of 22. 23, just years and years away. I'll get married, and well, what's it going to be like? Well, I will marry someone hot who will keep their abs forever, and we'll kiss, and no kiss will be less than 3 seconds long. And, we'll never fight. We'll never fight unless tickle fighting counts. And then if there's any issue or drama between us, it'll be resolved within like 30 minutes because that's the way it goes in the shows, in the episodes, and then resume tickle fighting. And that's the way it's going to be. And not only were our expectations a little unrealistic, but in the midst of that, we realized that we never could have accounted for how imperfect this perfect person for me was going to be, right? Nor did we account for how deep our own flaws go that really kind of junk things up. See, we were blissfully unaware of all of that. That's a sobering reality, that there's just this gap between what we expected and what is real. Here's another sobering reality. Reality reveals what romance conceals. And here's what I mean by that, is that romance in the earliest stages of a relationship can cover over a multitude of sins. It's like we look back and we're like, man, I wasn't even seeing straight. We're elbowing our best friends. Like, when were you going to point that out to me? If you look romance up in the dictionary, you'll find that romance is not just a spirit of love. It's a spirit of adventure. You know what I'm talking about? Spirit of adventure, and comparatively speaking, the exciting beginnings of a relationship can really make you think that things are just always going to be that way. I'll take you back to when I was 28 years old. Single guy. I bought the first house I expected to just live in, and this is 2-bedroom duplex in Minooka, Illinois. It was in 2006. And I remember closing on that house on March 11th, 2006. And on April 27th, I met a girl, and her name is Courtney. And 2 Septembers later, we were married, and now we are married, and she moved in. And I just remember that small little house. It was so easy to keep clean. And it's a quiet street. And I remember how the sun used to come in through the blinds in the evening. And on any given evening, I would be sitting on the couch, maybe see you sitting on the chair, and I would say, "You hungry? Want dinner?" And she'd be like, "Yeah, I could eat." And you know what would happen? We would just both stand up and just walk out the door. With maybe the slight jingle of keys to pierce the air. That's not true anymore. We want to make that same move today. There's like shouting and threats and a whole mass movement in bags, tote bags of just-in-case items, and the search for the perfect car toy and the search for the other flip-flop. And no, not those. I don't want to wear those flip-flops. And seatbelts and the gymnastics of big people trying to reach into little cars, buckle in children who may not want to be buckled at the moment. And like all of this is not simple, and it's not romantic, but that's what it is. It's not what we started with. What romance conceals, reality eventually reveals. Reality hits when you discover something, that God put a spender with a saver. And he's just laughing. Because he loves to do junk like that just to work out some holiness in the both of you. Reality hits when the little people outnumber the big people. And then your needs that seem to be so important back in the day get so far shoved off the back burner that's like they're out in the yard somewhere. That's when reality hits. Reality hits when the days that end with "honey, not tonight" vastly outnumber the nights of "honey, let's do this thing." Reality hits when job demands pull your focus away from home and when changes in the family kind of turn everything upside down. Reality hits when you age and body chemistry changes and you just ache. Like, it's not even fair, right? Like, when we were younger, you had to do stupid things to earn those aches. And now as you get older, it's just like a party favor for making it into a new decade or something like that. Here's the point. It's that when our expectations were off about romance, and our expectations were off about the relationship, or when we realize that romance isn't all there is, it can cloud how strongly we feel about each other. True or false? Pastor Craig Groeschel asks it this way. He says, "Have you ever noticed how over time marriage moves from arms locked to arms folded?" It's true. And over time, our reasons to mull around in disappointment and think critically of our significant other and throw pity parties for ourselves and adopt an emotionless posture of our marriage, these reasons just start adding up. And why we're talking about this today is because I want you to know that you can push back. That it doesn't have to go that route. We can go back to when strong feelings moved us toward each other. It's called passion. We can go back to when strong feelings moved us through brick walls for each other. It's called passion. We can go back, and I'm not talking about going back to when we were more naive. Listen, your dumber days are over. You should be happy about that. And I'm not talking about going back to recreating simpler times. You realize if you did that, you would have to get rid of so much good stuff that God has given you along the way. Stuff like promotions and kids and like better credit scores. I realize you've been through some hard stuff, but like, true or false, your scar stories today are way cooler than they were before you got into this relationship, right? So we're not talking about recreating simpler times or being naive. How do we go back to more moments where emotion rules? I'm going to tell you. We restore passion by going back to doing the things we once did. And this was like totally not unintentional, but we dropped into Genesis 2 at the very beginning, and now I want to drop into Revelations 2, which is at the very ending of the book. What I want you to see is the similar longing in a different relationship. It's the relationship that God has with his people and what God wants to see in the relationships of his people with his people. It's Revelations 2, and we're going to drop into a conversation. He is getting down to the brass tacks with a specific body of believers, the church of Ephesus. And this is what he says, Revelations chapter 2. He says, hey, I know all the things you do, and I've seen your hard work and your patient endurance, but I've got this complaint against you. You don't love me or each other as you did at first. And look how far you've fallen. Turn back to me and do the works you did at first. And as you look at those verses, understand this is true of all relationships, is that when passion isn't protected, the relationship becomes mechanical, and that will eventually lead to deadening the relationship. And God, who cares enough about the relationship to say something, puts his hand in his hair and says, hey, I have a complaint. I have a complaint. The practical ongoing routines, they're great. The loyalty, that's great. But it's not enough. I miss witnessing the strong feelings that were there, that you had for each other and that you had for me. Those were the feelings were what made this relationship an adventure. And maybe some of us can say, and yes, I can see my marriage in that as well. That in our marriages we can end up with two people giving what they give, giving their marriage a passing grade because they're doing decent things and because they're putting up with each other like decently enough. But if they're honest, they would both agree that there is a longing in their hearts for something that they truly miss. It's the runaway feelings of selfless love and sacrificial love and inventive, creative, inspiring love and grateful love, sacrificial love. It's just tenderly fierce and fiercely tender. Those strong, intimate feelings, that's passion. And passion will bring you back together in a hurry. Passion is what will keep you coming back home. Passion is what will keep you doing irrational things for each other, what will excite you about doing some more life together. Passion is what's most rewarding at any stage of the relationship. And we restore passion by going back to doing the things we once did. If you want to have what you once had, you've got to do the things which you once did. You do the things you did at first. And so with the time that we've got left, I want to get real practical about how we can restore a passion worth protecting in our relationships. We're going to reclaim some intimacy. We're going to reclaim some excitement. And my challenge for you is to pick any relationship you want. You pick your relationship with God, your relationship with a best friend, with a grown kid. Pick your relationship with your spouse. You pick the relationship, and here's what I'm going to do. I want to challenge you, and this is good notes time. I want to challenge you to restore 4 types of quality time in that relationship in the near future. All right? Ready to make a move? Just nod your head if you're with me. Or say something, or burp, or give me something. Yeah, all right, we're good. Rob's with me. You want to go where Rob's going. That's what I've always said. All right, so 4 types of quality time in the near future. Here's the first one. Get some face-to-face time. Face-to-face time. And why do you want to try to restore that relationship? Is because texts have their place. Emojis have their place. Sticky notes in the kitchen, they have their place. But in the scope of relationship, they're more like placeholders. Wouldn't you agree? That they bank off of what has already been earned and accomplished in the relationship. They're not amazing relationship builders. They're more like relationship maintainers. We don't look to those little tricks to reignite a relationship. When you get face-to-face time, it's different. Here's what face-to-face time is. It's when you face their face. And you don't necessarily talk while something else is going on or while you do something else. You lock in facially, personally, intentionally. And what this will allow you to do is to start reading the whole person, not just deciphering their words. That's a completely different ballgame. You start to notice them on a whole new level. You start to pick up on a ton more clues about what else to ask, about what they might need, about what you're curious about. And more clues lead to more ideas on what else you can do. So, there's a relationship that's suffering. See if you can put some more face-to-face time in the way of that relationship. Idea number 2, heart-to-heart time. And here's what I mean by this. Heart-to-heart time is so that you can clear the air, so that we can feel something for each other again. I'll give you a fistful of starters here, okay? Here. I love that you ... I love that you ... I admire that you ... I've never met someone like you who ... I will never forget the time when you ... Use this one cautiously, but what about this one? It really hurt my feelings when you ... And I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Or how about this one? I regret when I ... Like, take a deep breath, be bold, finish any one of those statements for somebody so that you can start feeling something again. Heart-to-heart time can bring instant warmth to a friendship that has over time gone lukewarm. You know, when I can tell you what, Courtney and I are going on 15 years of marriage, and I can tell you that there have been not just batchfuls of weeks, but even seasons where we feel like the feelings are suppressed, and we've been stuffing questions. And I can tell you, there have just been some marked times over the course of our relationship, some solid heart-to-heart time, just like opens everything up. It's like you just stepped off a plane and your sinuses and your ears pop, and you're like, whoa. I'm telling you, that can happen in a relationship with a little bit of heart-to-heart time. Just got to make sure to make it happen. Here's another idea. Side-by-side time. Restoring passion to a relationship can be helped immediately with side-by-side time. What does that mean? Well, it means that you choose to be interested in their interests. Can you do that? You choose to be concerned about their concerns. You join their cause. Find the fight they're in, and you find a way to get their back. You detect the load that they're under, because everybody's under a load, right? Detect the load they're under and find a way to help lift it. You may not be able to fix their thing, and they might not be asking you to fix their thing, but one thing is for sure, you can make sure that they don't carry that burden alone. That's what side-by-side time looks like. So what do we got? We've got face-to-face time, we've got heart-to-heart time, we've got side-by-side time, and here's one more. We're going to call this belly button to belly button time. Oh yes, let the awkward laughter commence. But listen, the God who created marriage, the God who created our bodies, He created intimacy, closeness, that the thing that can be experienced in all relationships. Intimacy can take a physical level, a tactile, tangible level. He created it to be sensory and exciting and loaded with feeling. And listen, above all, God created sex. He created it to cement a man's feelings for his woman alone, and for that woman's feelings to be only for her man. It's a genius design. Belly button to belly button time is awesome, okay? And it's time that we just embrace that and run with that. If you're married and you have this premier intimacy tool at your disposal and you're not using it, then quite simply, you are not as cemented together as the design calls for, as God wants you to be, as you could be. And so when it comes to sex in a marriage, the encouragement is use it as often as you can, as often as you are physically able, emotionally available. You figure it out together, or at least have this courageous conversation. Why not? Just so that we can, as a couple, identify the obstacles. Because listen, if there's a problem in the bedroom, odds are that the problem didn't begin in the bedroom. It's belly button to belly button time. And church, I want you to remember this. I want to say this very clearly because there's just so much confusion out there right now. I'm going to put it on the screen. Hear me clearly. Sexual intimacy was designed to be experienced and enjoyed within the boundaries of marriage between a man and a woman. Period. The Bible. Like, that's cover to cover. This is what you're going to find. I'm not talking about dating. I'm not talking about engagement. I'm talking about marriage only. And so, church, just as I am challenging couples to restore feeling to their marriage in this way, I'm also challenging all of us to protect against misusing sex as well. There's so many ways for us to be selfish, and all the affair-type behaviors and the sleeping around and the open marriages and pornography and like any way that you know we're misusing this gift. I want you to understand that they're all great ways to destroy the ability of sex, to create and stir up powerful feelings inside of you for that one person that God would have you commit your heart and life to. You want to do that? And if that's the nudge you needed for today, then let us help. Find some new boundaries so that you can protect yourself. Find some new boundaries so that you can protect other people. And if you need forgiveness, then seek that out. If you need counsel, then seek that out. Listen, we serve a God who is highly restorative. He loves to forgive and reconcile and help us experience a new day by His power, His strength in our weakness. But when it comes back to marriages, listen, there's nothing like celebrating the closeness and the safety of a married relationship than with some belly button to belly button time. Just telling you. It's more than a physical act. It's a spiritual act. It is God approved, God endorsed. It's designed to affect you to the core, mind, heart, and soul. I want to make sure as we wrap this up, the team has come out and close us in some worship. I want to make sure that you and I find a way to end up where we began, because we care about our relationships, right? We're trying to find the intersection of where passion fits in. Here it is in a nutshell. You ready? The times change and people age and life surprises us and relationships sputter, whether it's a relationship with God or a friend or a spouse. Passion matters, and everything changes when your heart is in it. Everything changes when your heart is back in it. So, what could happen with the relationship that God is leading you to concentrate on next? What could happen with some more face-to-face time, heart-to-heart time, side-by-side time? If it's your marriage, belly button to belly button time. I'll tell you what could change. You will start feeling it. It's called passion. It's what moves us toward each other. It's what moves us through brick walls for each other. More moments where emotions rule. More moments where we do surprising, creative, irrational things for each other. Unforgettable moments that make the relationship worth treasuring. I want to encourage you to just take a posture where you feel alone enough in this room where you can concentrate on what God is doing in your heart. church is praying for you, praying for relational repair, praying for a God with whom all things are possible, to do things that only He can do, to give you ideas, to give you permission to make a bold move. Joan, I thought it would be fun to end this service together. And not just pray for all the relationships, but to really kind of bring us back to the one relationship. It's a relationship with God. And the reason why I say that is because the light from that relationship is the light by which we see all things in our lives. Where things start to become clear and make sense, and we know what we need to do next. And so, God, each one of us in this room included in your presence, no matter how far away we felt or how new this feels. God, as you receive us into your presence, I'd love to ask you, if we were to just surrender all to you and submit to you, what would you like next? How do you want us to feel about you? Could you bring dead feelings to life? Could you start something new in us that would just keep pulling us back to you? We've grown so tired of trying to be the thing we're supposed to be without your help. And God, you are love. And I pray that would work in our favor, that our hearts would be just endeared to yours. That you'd pull us in, that we could have a moment. The relationship between us and you would just start to take flight. Because we really believe that when that relationship is in pocket, everything changes. Thank you for your grace, your love, your faithfulness.